Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Your Bible Questions Answered. Today, we're going to follow up on an episode we did yesterday about the red heifer and the ashes of the red heifer. What would happen if an actual red heifer that was pure, that was according to the standard that the Israelis had set, had come to Israel and was ready to be sacrificed? Would that mean the temple would immediately be built and Christ would immediately return? And the answer is no, because there's problems. And the problem is, of course, on the Temple Mount, the Jews have no custodianship over it. They cannot do any worship there. They certainly couldn't sacrifice anything or build a temple right now. So it's a matter of time before that can happen. Now, it's going to happen eventually. But the idea that red heifers were brought to Israel, like we talked about yesterday, and that portends the time of the end, Christ must be coming soon. No, because so many things still need to happen. And so we talked about that yesterday. And this is the follow-up because we want to look at now specifically what the Bible has to say about the red heifer. Now, to answer this question, this comes from our book, The Jews, Jerusalem, and the Coming Temple, pages 88 to 91. It's a free download from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. There's a lot more in the 4 pages in the text that we've written and what I'm going to go over here because we're going to just get to the nuts and bolts of this. I think it'll be very clear when we're done what the issues are. So let's get right to it. All right, we're under the heading Current Preparations for a Third Temple. We've come this far in the book, Jews, Jerusalem, the Coming Temple. And here's what we say. For many years, preparations have been underway for its construction. They have been preparing. However, there are a number of issues which remain unresolved. And one of the problems, we talk about this, the ashes of the red heifer or the red cow. One of the problems with respect to the rebuilding of the temple concerns the ritual defilement of the people. Since the Holy Land has been occupied by Gentiles, the Jewish people have become ritually defiled by contact with them. Therefore, some type of purification needs to occur before the Jews could enter the Temple Mount and begin rebuilding the temple. This is especially true for those in the priesthood. Now, the answer is found in the sacrifice of a red cow or a red heifer, and that's found in Numbers 19, verses 1 through 11. We won't read all 11 verses here, but we'll get the gist of it. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the ordinance of the law which the Lord has commanded. Instruct the Israelites to bring you a red heifer without blemish, which has no defect and has never carried a yoke. You must give it to Eleazar the priest so that he can take outside the camp and must be slaughtered before him." And then it goes down, that's verses 1 to 3, then verse 9. Then a man who is ceremonially clean must gather up the ashes of the red heifer and put them in a ceremonially clean place outside the camp. They must be kept for the community of the Israelites for use in the water of purification. It is a purification for sin. The one who gathers the ashes of the heifer must wash his clothes and be ceremonially unclean until evening. This, and here's the key, will be a permanent ordinance both for the Israelites and the resident foreigner who lives among them. That's Numbers 19, and we read verses 1 to 3 and 9 to 11 here. All right, now notice this, or 9 to 10. Notice that the ashes of the sacrificed heifer are to be gathered and kept in a ceremonially clean place outside of the camp. Okay, they're to be kept, and they're to be kept for the community. Okay, put in a ceremonially clean place and kept for the community. The red heifer ordinance, according to this, is to be a permanent one. Now, there's a number of preliminary things about this sacrifice that we should note. One of the things we talk about in the book is that a red heifer or red cow. Some translations say red heifer, some say red cow. Same thing. It's a young animal, a female, obviously, and it's red in color, and it has to be without blemish, as we read there in the context. And so some of the translations will say something different on that, but and we deal with that, but that's not really here nor there. The point is, our next point we get to, this was a unique offering. Now, from the Expositor's Bible Commentary, they explain how it's unique. He said the factor that makes this unique is that the animal involved was not a standard sacrificial beast. This was a cow, not a bull. Contrast Leviticus 1:3, a male without defect. It has to be slaughtered, sahat, outside the camp, not at the holy altar. In contrast to the blood of sacrificial animals sprinkled against the altar on all sides, see Leviticus 1:5, some of the blood of the heifer was to be sprinkled from the priest's finger 7 times towards the front of the tent of meeting. That's verse 4. In nearly every respect, the killing of the red heifer was distinctive. This was a female animal taken outside the camp to be killed. The priest had to be present, but there was no identification made with it. A bit of blood was sprinkled from the priest's finger toward the tabernacle 7 times. The rest of the animal was to be burned in its entirety without draining the blood or cleansing its offal. That's Numbers Expository Bible Commentary, the Revised Edition, doing the book of Numbers there. Okay, in fact, what's interesting, this is the only place in Scripture that refers to this particular offering. In other words, they're commanded to do it, but there's no recorded instance of it ever being done in the Old Testament or the New Testament for that matter. So the bottom line is this is a very enigmatic offering there. It's unique there with so many of the sacrifices different than any other thing. That's to begin with the first thing. Now, why was it done? And the Moody Bible Commentary says it was done to purify the tabernacle and keep it from contamination. They explain the purpose of the sacrifice, and they say there are two basic views were held on the purpose. Why was the sprinkling done? One view is that it consecrated the heifer itself as a suitable, acceptable sacrifice. Since the blood was consecrated by the act of sprinkling, in the direction of the tabernacle. By extension, so was the red heifer itself consecrated as a purification offering. That's one view. But they say a more likely view is that the blood was sprinkled toward the tabernacle in order to purify the tent of meeting, and protect it from contamination. The focus in this section of Numbers has been on maintaining a pure tabernacle. See, Numbers 18:1. Since the location of the tabernacle is in the direction towards which this blood is sprinkled, this makes this view more likely. The notion of a tabernacle as sacred space that must be kept holy is a key theme in the book of Leviticus. And that's from Moody Online Bible Commentary, the book of Numbers, chapter 19. All right, since the tabernacle was considered to be a sacred space for Israel in the wilderness, it seems this command was given to protect its holiness. So that's the first thing we need to understand. So here comes the question. Is it a requirement for the third temple? In other words, does this sacrifice need to take place before a third temple is built? And here's our answer. Some Jews insist that one of the requirements necessary for a third temple is the sprinkling of the ashes of a red cow or red heifer. In the past, the ashes of this particular cow were used to purify the people from defilement. And now we're going to talk about the need for an undefiled heifer or cow. If it is necessary to sacrifice a red heifer or red cow to cleanse the people from ceremonial defilement, then a proper animal must be found to accomplish this task. The cow that is to be used in this sacrifice must meet certain requirements. Now, Rabbi Ariel of the Temple Institute went on and gave an in-depth explanation of the physical requirements that must be met for such a ceremony to ever take place. This man that said this recently is from the present Temple Institute, and it's fascinating what he says. We quote him. We know that there have been 9 red heifers throughout history, the first one having been prepared in the time of Moses and Eleazar, the son of Aaron, Ariel explained. A red heifer is a female cow that is completely red with no more than one non-red hair on its entire body. In the language of the Bible, red is not exclusively what we know today as red. It also includes brown and other similar shades of red. This excludes black. All of the hairs on its body must be the same color. He goes on. Now get this. The animal must also be 2 years and 1 month old. Well, that's your limit. Doesn't it? 2 years and 1 month for the sacrifice, he explained. There can be no blemish, no holes in the ear. Until that point, it is considered a calf and not a cow. At that point, the cow can be slaughtered and prepared. The ceremony is not being conducted as a way to expedite or usher in the coming of the Messiah. He makes that clear, Ariel explains. But in actuality, it is simply a sign of obedience by the Jewish people to obey the law given to them by God through his servant Moses. So he clears up some certain things. First of all, very specific, a 2 years, 1 month old red cow. It has to hit that particular age. All the colors must be the same, no black, no blemish at all. And the ceremony is not to usher in the coming of the Messiah. This is important to understand because people were saying that, well, the red heifer is going to bring in the Messiah. No, that's not what they're thinking about. Not at all. The red heifer is there basically to consecrate if they indeed build another temple, which may or may not mean the Messiah would be coming at some time soon. So how about with respect to the coming temple that the New Testament talks about? We've mentioned this a number of times. We've written a book called The Jews, Jerusalem, and the Coming Temple, where this material that we're going through now is found. And there are 3 different perspectives, in other words, with respect to the sprinkling of the ashes of the red cow or the red heifer to purify the priesthood before the building of the next temple. So let's look at the 3 options. One of them is one of the ones When I was first getting into this in the early 1980s, this was kind of the big thing at the time. And that was find the original ashes of the red heifers or the red cows. Some believe that the original ashes of the past red heifers or the red cows need to be found. In other words, to do this properly, you got to find the ashes. Why? It is argued that these particular animals were sacrificed 9 times in the history of Israel, from the time of the tabernacle to the time immediately before the second temple was destroyed. Each time a red heifer or red cow was sacrificed, its ashes were mixed together in an urn with the ashes of the previously sacrificed red heifers or red cows. Therefore, these ashes must be found to assure the purity of the priesthood. In other words, to sacrifice one biblically, it is thought because they were all put in the same urn. Remember, it was to take it outside the camp, and kept the ashes. Well, the tradition is that 9 times of the sacrifice that was taking place, every time a red heifer was sacrificed, they put it back in the same urn with the previous ashes. So they're all together, going all the way back to the original one at the time of Moses and Eleazar. And so this is has been one popular belief. Here's our however. However, there's no biblical command for this to happen. Furthermore, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to identify the buried ashes from previous sacrifices of these red cows. No one knows exactly where to look, for there are several possible sites listed in the historical records. Now, I want to give you a little personal note here. I had the honor of touring the Mount of Olives with the late Dr. Asher Kaufman. Asher became popular in the mid 80s with his theory of where the temple stood, not at the place of the Dome of the Rock, but 107 meters to the north and west of the Dome of the Rock at a place called the Dome of the Spirits. He got international fame for it. He's a wonderful man. Got to know him really well. In fact, when he came to America, I'm the one who picked him up at the airport, got him speaking in front of our church, and we did some things together. And we even talked about writing a book together, but that unfortunately never came about for a number of reasons. But the bottom line is we're touring the Mount of Olives because one of the spots that he had shared with me, one ancient source gave the exact place on the Mount of Olives where they thought the red heifer was buried. So he pointed it out to me. He said, unfortunately, the owners of the property continually refuse to allow any investigation of the site. Whether or not the original ashes were buried there is still a mystery. But he pointed out, he said, look, if this ancient source is correct and we're measuring it correctly, then right over here, and he showed it to me, this is where these ashes, the red heifer from the time of Moses on to the last time it was sacrificed would be there. It was quite interesting and fascinating. Anyway, find the original ashes, number one. Number two, a new red heifer is to be sacrificed. Because I asked him, what if you don't find the ashes? And Asher said, well, just sacrifice another one. So that's simple enough. Second line of thoughts, they no need to find the original ashes. One needs to only find a new red heifer, red cow that meets the requirements, and then sacrifice it. And again, when I asked Dr. Kaufman what the people should do if the original ashes were not found, he simply said, just sacrifice a new one. It's just that simple. So that's no problem. Now, there is a third option here too, and that is no sacrifice is needed. Finally, there are those who argue that such sprinkling of the ashes of a red heifer or red cow is not necessary for the rebuilding of the temple or the purification of the people. So in other words, it's irrelevant now. You can still build a third temple without coming up with this pure 2 years and 1 month old perfect red heifer, because it's really hard to find one. They've been looking for years and years, like we said yesterday. Back in the 1980s, there was a man, like we said, from Mississippi who supposedly had bred them, and few and far between they are. So anyway, that's the last option. Options for no sacrifice. So here's the summary to this issue. It seems that sometime before the next temple is built, there likely will be the sprinkling of the ashes of a sacrificed cow or red heifer. These ashes will either be from those previously sacrificed, or more likely from a newly sacrificed red heifer or cow. It's also possible that no red cow would be needed. Only time will tell what actually happens. But the point we make, even if a perfect red cow is found, it's only a 1 month envelope you have when you can sacrifice it. It's got to be 2 years and 1 month old, no blemish, all red hairs or dark hairs, no black hairs, and it's very limited time. And so again, that limits when that could happen. And certainly that would have to be put together the time related the same time if a new temple was being constructed. But again, that's way far off because again, the real estate is not even in the hands of the Israelis right now. So that should sum up the whole issue of the red heifer. So Bottom line is, don't listen to someone that says, well, they brought red heifers into Israel. It means Christ is coming back soon. No, there's a lot of other things that need to happen before that. He is coming back, but as far as soon as, we just don't know. We look forward to him coming every day, but until then, we do the job God has called us to do. I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.